All right, welcome to episode 16 of the Sonic Visions podcast. We're packed today with our veteran guests. How's everybody doing today?
Doing
Doing
okay?
good.
Yeah, good mate.
Nice.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Nice,
Mhm.
nice. Anything new, exciting, or anything anybody wants to mention right off the top?
I
Well,
got some.
I mean,
Go ahead.
as new stuff we're listening to.
Sure.
Well, I've been listening to a little bit more classical than I have been uh, in the recent past. So I've got this what is this Blue album? But yeah, I've been just in general trying to go back to some back catalog things and playing them in on cooking food. Trying to go
Oh,
back, but yeah, someone else go. I need to find the name of it, and I'll come back.
All right, cool. Anything new gear or things you're looking forward to, anything like that?
Yeah, I have a few things, but I'm going to reserve it for Co's Corner.
Okay, cool.
That's good. Everyone's holding back. Well, I'm really excited. I have a new true wireless headphone coming in either at the end of next week or very soon after. And it's related to the new job position I accepted in the middle of November. I could finally start talking about it. I am joining Axel Grell in his newly formed Grell Audio Company. Currently, I'm still also consulting with Sennheiser, but as you can imagine, Axel Grell being the developer of the HD 580 all the way up to the HD 800S and 820, he still has a pretty good relationship, occasionally consulting with Sennheiser, but he kind of wanted to YOLO and Carpe Diem, all those good words, make his own company and kind of do things by his own rules. And he asked me to kind of help out with community content and keeping up with trends. So I just joined him. Very exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. There's only
mate,
three of us.
that is so exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really. It's really cool too because okay, so maybe I'm more of a community mouth yapper guy, but Axel originally hired me at Sennheiser because he liked my reviews and he thought I have a similar ear to him. And so he wants to kind of show me some things, and I'm going to learn a whole lot about audio from him. So that'll be cool.
What an opportunity. And I mean, also great to have someone in the community that can poke Axel and be like, "Hey, everyone's still using the HD 800. Like, do it again, and we'll
Right?
buy it. We'll
Yeah.
buy it.
I mean,
Just mate."
I think that he's got a lot of ambitions with that. The first product is the True Wireless. Honestly, let's look at it because it's going to be really easily accessible, and it's going to help Grell get the funding he needs without doing crowdfunding or other things like that. So instead of like a $300 True Wireless, there's pretty much just me doing marketing, and I'm going to be trying to do social media and stuff as well. But you know, a $200 thing that's going to beat a lot of other options out there. Hopefully, I mean, I haven't heard it yet, but I believe in Grell, and $200 launch price is pretty attractive for noise canceling and all that good stuff.
If you don't
Um,
mind me poking you
yeah,
first.
poke me.
Um,
Can I
no
laugh
sub.
like the
Yeah, yeah.
doughboy?
No subtext. If Grell ever comes out with anything gold related, I will be the first customer.
Oh, yeah, I'll make sure to put to keep that in mind for sure.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
because yeah, the first product is True Wireless, but who knows what the next things will be. Well, Axel actually has a roadmap, but we'll be getting into some interesting stuff, and hopefully I don't know. Again, with it being a small company, I may be able to have some influence, but we trust Grell's ears probably more than mine. For good reason.
Well, congrats. That's a really exciting because you're working with probably I'd say the foremost authority and respected figure in this audiophile space we're in. So
The
massive
goat of dynamic
massive
headphones.
congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah, dynamic headphones, electrostats. He did a lot with the Orpheus too.
Yeah.
And he was he's definitely very aware how to design a planar headphone. So I get to join Juan and Zek as people, industry insiders, and I think it's really cool to actually be more than a guy on the periphery.
Amazing. Congratulations, Ev. That's huge. Good work, mate.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear about all that. I was actually asking Smod if we could have like a manufacturer's moment. So I just kind of gave the deets about Grell Audio. First product now available for order, shipping estimate about 2 weeks. What about you two? One, unless I muted him. I don't know.
I don't know. He's going
Yeah,
quiet.
he's processing. That's
Yeah,
okay.
no, I'm processing it too. I'm like, is there finally going to be an HC800 successor? Like, I'm just like,
That's what I was thinking.
like, I'm like vibrating in my chair right now. Like, oh my god, I hope he doesn't do a planar. I hope he just does dynamic again, or maybe he'll do an electrostat. Fuck, I'll have to rebuild my entire system.
Oh no! Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the possibilities though are exciting, right? If there's
Yeah.
some sense of progress and things to change, that is a very exciting time. And I will tell you that a personal thing for me is that well, I've been really excited almost since I started joining HeadFi in like 2009, 2008. I've been really into DSP and especially for me, surround sound. But with the rise in popularity of frequency response graphs and acceptance of EQ and stuff in general, I think Axel, with not only active noise cancellation, but his noise annoyance reduction, like patent pending unique noise cancellation technology, and also partnership with Sound ID to like, hey, you don't have to be a frequency expert to hear how the different tones can interact with each other and what you like and stuff like that. They partnered with Sound ID so that you can listen to music and it EQs specific parts of the frequency spectrum, and you compare A and B, which one you like better, and you go through like a series of quiz questions and testing out these A/B comparisons, and it builds up a customized EQ profile just for your ears, because everyone's ears are different. We all hear a different frequency response filter because of our ear shape and canals. But you also, you tailor it to your ears and your taste. And anyone can use Sound ID app. It's free, and that's pretty awesome. So now you don't have to go to like some random YouTuber and say like, hey, have you built an EQ profile specifically for this headphone? And like, well, you could do better. EQ it for your particular ears. The difference is with Grell Audio, they partnered so that you can upload that EQ profile into the Bluetooth chip of the TWS-1, and then that profile works on whatever source you want. So your phone, your computer, your TV, smart TV. Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
Similar to what Qdelix is doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually,
Pretty cool.
Wait, whox?
Qdelix, they have a Bluetooth receiver that has like a companion app for parametric EQ, and then it gets stored on the Bluetooth receiver, and then you can just use it on whatever.
That is awesome, and I do think that is the way to do it. I was not aware of that particular solution until you mentioned it, and I love learning. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Although
I think the Sound ID booth at CanJam was probably the most interesting, probably the coolest booth I went to, and the other company that did a partnership with Sound ID was Colorfly. So Colorfly
did not go to that
same
booth.
stuff. Yeah, it's
man, I want to talk to Colorfly. I've got some. I want to customize my stuff.
And also I think it was one more as well. So yeah, there's a lot of companies that are starting to pick up on Sound ID. It's a phenomenal technology. Love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it though, like you said, there was that other company was X Sound. What was it? the other company with the Bluetooth receiver that has its own EQ. I mean, Ear Studio, there's the ES100 Mark 1 and Mark 2. That's that little Bluetooth amp predecessor to the iFi iGo and all that, those kinds of things. The Ear Studio app also allowed you to EQ and save it in there. And a secret, maybe not a secret, but everyone should know. Literally every single Bluetooth device has an equalization. Usually, it's not always customizable by the user, but it's a very integral part about how a manufacturer tunes a Bluetooth headphone after transmission. It's there by default by Qualcomm and other. So it's always there. It's just now companies are starting to wake up to like, hey, frequency response is a hot topic, and now they're kind of letting more people in. And I like how Grell's integrating with Sound ID to bring those two things together. So I think that the next Grell product probably will also make use of DSP technologies to kind of like, nip and tuck and pull things forward more.
Which one was it?
Oh, I didn't say what it was. I just said
he said the next product.
Next. Okay.
The quotation marks next Grell audio product probably will also be doing that. But I mean, the whole lineup probably not. And Grell does spend a lot of time tuning his jazz to his taste, and you guys know what he kind of goes for. Although he does self-describe as a little bit of a bass head, so that's interesting.
That is very interesting, given the headphones he produces. But I mean, I'd be very curious to see if this like early stuff from Grell is trying to target, the general population, not so much an audiophile population, just to try and get themselves off the ground and get some money behind them. But I know that like the passion. Yeah, TWS is for, and the next one, but I don't think the high-end audiophile market, or even like the mid-tier audiophile market, is that keen on DSP and EQ on the fly, and like they kind of like a product that just set in stone. I don't know. We had this conversation last week about tweaking speakers, and the vast majority of them being untweakable, but some of them allowing a little bit of tweaking. But I don't know. I don't know if if you had a HC800 successor and it had DSP or like a built-in parametric EQ with an app and was wireless, I don't think it would have the popularity rather than a set in stone wired, another dynamic planar electrostat.
Oh, I mean, totally. I agree 100% that sometime, I played with EQ for like first 6 years of my audio stuff, and eventually I just concluded that I wasn't as good at it as the amp design, headphone designers. So, I also pretty much, I don't know, a lot of the EQs I used just made the headphones sound worse. Some of that was because I wasn't using parametric high quality EQs. But I will also point out that a digital signal processor DSP isn't only about EQ.
Does other stuff, but I don't know. My experience with DSP and EQ is the same as yours. Even when using high quality ones, I always found that you might be able to fix one thing, but you usually cause another problem. And then with DSP, massive problems. Massive problems with speakers with cohesion and time alignment and stuff, because people were trying to buy amp and buy DAC, and then it gets complicated, but I'd never heard it implemented perfectly, so I kind of gave up. And it was a system where you should just be able to put a mic in the room and go calibrate and then set it, and then it goes and it should be perfect, but it never was. It was always like, an effort in Nervosa trying to correct, unity gain and stuff. You had to do it manually to try and make it sound normal. And I'm like, don't know if this is the future yet, or if it ever will be, but maybe it is, but I don't know. We'll have to see. Give it 10 years.
Well, I mean, I would still tie in noise canceling. Yes, that's true. And I would also say that, for example, noise canceling is tied in with DSP. I don't know if Axel is going to pursue spatial audio, surround sound with his DSPs. That's something that I love. I don't know if he has ideas on that, or if I can inspire him to be. But it is definitely rising, like with Apple. music, including it in their streaming service. Whew, I don't know. I'm having fun with it. It feels more speaker-like to me.
Yeah, but even like the more sort of traditional focused manufacturers like Odyssey, because they make their most well not most popular, but their flagship products are all analog, very analog audiophile products. But even they've been recognizing
Yeah, like their cipher
DSP as
cable
essentially the future. No, not just the cipher cable, but things like
and
what
the
they were doing in the
Mobius.
Mobius, with the positional, DSP and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Sankar at Jam, and yeah, he was telling me that because most of these innovations they're not coming from the audiophile companies, they're coming from much bigger companies, Facebook, Apple,
Right.
Amazon, and much larger manufacturers. And yeah, he was pretty excited for what they would be putting out and
Well,
for
and then
what that
also
would lead to.
audio focus companies, like if you don't mind a few shout outs. Oh my gosh. Since like backing away from Sennheiser, I'm now allowed to talk about more companies than Sennheiser was like, hey, it's great that you know a lot about other things, but let other people talk about them instead of talking about our competitors. Uh, Girls like, hey, show people that you know what's out there. So I can finally say I've got the Mobius. I had it since the Kickstarter and I love it. But um, the surround was built with was it Wise? No, it was uh, now I forget what the product was, but yeah, they partnered with someone else who was a software company. There's also the really cool Redscape Audio, who has shown up to a couple. Um, I think it was Adam Redkey, but Redscape Audio is the company. He's come to a couple of Can Jams showing off his software that you can install on any PC, and you can even get a head tracking module.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, and it's cool because, you think as a video gamer, I've got a monitor that's, 27 inches and I'm sitting in a chair pretty close. I don't move much. But, you know, how do you break your controller? You rage, you move. Sometimes you just like shifting your seat to get a little more comfortable. And every time you do a little shift like that, it recalibrates your brain on positioning. Head tracking is cool and the real deal. I think Senkar's Mobius implementation was very cool. So was their partnership with HyperX and uh, the Orbit HyperX Orbit headphones.
Oh
That
yeah.
was basically the non-Bluetooth version. Um, it's a cool product, and I think stuff like that deserves to continue growing. It's stagnated. It was actually a big deal at the end of the 90s. Like you could play Descent, which was a very early Polygon game, but you could hear in full 3D, like above, below, front, behind, um, and up through Windows XP. There was Creative Labs and another company that was big behind it. Um, but Microsoft, with the release of Vista, dropped support for a lot of the libraries and um, audio stack tools that were used by these companies to do their surround sound. And some of creative kind of made like a back end solution to kind of bridge the gap and bring it back in, but new gaming developers didn't utilize it as much, and we had the death of spatial audio for a while. But now it's coming back. You've got it built in on the PlayStation and Xbox Series, and
Well,
they
now
have
it's
different.
better too.
It's much better. We have much more computational power to do like audio ray tracing.
And things like
There's
HRTF estimation has gotten better too. Lots of research
very
on that.
much, yep, head transfer related functions. Um, I bought one of the Smith Realizer A16s, and that took forever to come out, but that's a treat. Um, talk about personalized EQ. um, but it's a very interesting field of if you ever get a chance and you thought Sound ID was cool, you need to hear, hopefully they come out of the woodworks and Smith Research comes back to a product show. You should hear something they do. That's really cool. But no, sorry, I'm excited. I'm just brimming with energy. You guys can tell, right? I don't know. Lots of things happening. We've been so sheltered and bunkered down for health safety and health wisdom, but finally starting to kind of get out there. There is still supply issues. I was mentioning before the show started that we would Grow Audio would have already been shipping. It's just some things are held up by slow boat or airlift, but get stuck in customs. Um, Grill's first 400 units come in are at customs right now. Next week there's 100 more units, and then 500 units coming in the week after. Uh, it's just um, tough, and we're in Christmas now too, or in the holiday seasons with many holidays, and there's just a total shift to much more mail, much more parcel and shipment logistics going on. But we got Juan back. What was your manufacturer's moment, or Zach?
Um, my microphone cut out earlier. I don't know why. It does that sometimes.
I hear you great now.
Yeah. Okay. So, what should I talk about? Yeah. Supply has been problematic, even for me.
Yeah.
So timelines get pushed back, and other things happen with life. Still on track, but things take time. Yeah, basically we started basically like a soft launch type of thing, a pre-order. For the couple people who really wanted to support the project, so that has helped out. And so that has put us on track to start manufacturing. I mean, we're ordering parts right now, but hopefully continue manufacturing and have a product ready by New York to ship. So hopefully that goes well. I'm probably going to show up at that LA AudioCon next month on the 15th of January.
Ooh, cool.
I don't know if anyone's going to go.
I think I'm going to go to CanJam New York City. I didn't know about the LA show until this episode.
Yeah, I didn't know about it until like yesterday morning. So.
But hey, if you could go, awesome, go. Show people.
Yeah, so right now pretty much like the sound portion is basically done. It's all just manufacturing now. Trying to get the electricals worked out. There are some other things that aren't sound quality related that need work, such as getting the impedance response corrected. We had that sorted out, but trying to optimize things a little bit, and then get the actual PCBs manufactured, get the cups manufactured, get parts ordered, and hope that there's no more issues with supply. So, yeah.
So good job on making the progress. I mean, it's not hard, but sometimes you just got to struggle through it.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, I appreciate that, guys. The manufacturer's moment. It's awesome. And yes, we are looking forward to the successor to HD800, and as well as your current projects. And I think it was smart to go with the IEM, the wireless IEM, to get a good foundation and get a good cash flow and that kind of thing. So that before you go into the more exotic niche stuff. So that's pretty cool. Look forward to that.
The gateway.
Yeah,
open it up
absolutely.
for people.
Absolutely. So I mean,
you think should we pressure Grell that he should instead of naming it a bunch of letters and numbers, should we call it the Begleiter, which is German for companion? If you guys push with me, he might be like, "Oh yeah, a whole bunch of people are saying that's a good idea."
Yeah, Evie. I mean, definitely mention our community to him, and that we're huge fans. And if he ever wants to discuss with us on here, then he's more than welcome. And yeah, if he does go down the path of a successor to the 800, then please let us know when you're allowed to, obviously.
Right. Oh, I'll definitely. Yeah, no problem. There's going to be a little bit of there may even be some like feedback to go back and forth and be involved with it, but it'll be cool. I will point out that right now it's 12:40 in the morning for him.
Yeah.
You're more like it's at this time it's more likely you'll get me.
Okay, fair
But
enough.
I'm going back and forth all the time. He's telling me what happened while I was sleeping, and I'm telling him what was going on when he was sleeping.
That's cool. Awesome. So last episode we had a segment where we were talking about publishers, or sorry, not publishers, manufacturers who make products and they don't publish the kind of internals. They're kind of shy about what's inside. And for example, Macintosh and there's this Coincident Technologies, and there's different companies like that. I think we left off on that, and there was more to be said, and we didn't kind of finish there. And of course, we have some new guests. I think Juan and Evie weren't on last week's show, if I recall. I'm not sure, but were you there, Juan?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, you weren't. Yeah. So, do you guys have any thoughts on that? And it's interesting because you guys are both manufacturers. Do you guys have any thoughts on companies who kind of hide the internals, don't publish internal photos? Any is that a negative for you, or do you think that's fine? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a very interesting question. Do you mind if I jump in first?
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, personally, as someone who went to college and flunked out first semester from an engineering degree, and then switched over to graphic design, I've always found engineering fascinating. I love how things work, and I think that it's really cool to see all the pieces. Uh, you know, on a smartphone, people just don't realize how uh, spec sized those camera sensors are until you actually see them, like how much bigger the lens is than the camera sensor. And exploded views of IEMs are really cool. I really liked that Sennheiser was showing off like um, the back volume in their latest IEMs, showing off like, hey, uh, this has got 3 different Helmholtz absorbers to help tune the sound, and the front of it has like a specific shape to diffuse um, audio spikes and things. They call it the vortex, and it's really cool when you can like point out these parts. Um, and Axel has also done a really cool picture, or Rel Audio has done a picture with the true wireless shown with all its pieces kind of exploded out. The potential problem, at least I see 2 potential problems, could be one, you just see it and you don't know what it's about. And it's just like information that just goes over your head. But it's still interesting to see how many pieces go into it, as long as you're not like, oh, this one has 12 pieces and that one has 10, so the 12 one's better, or vice versa. Like, oh, a more simple thing is better. Yeah, it
used to be a pretty big issue with the IEMs.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think it will still be, but
it's in a base, but yeah.
Yeah, but to some extent, um, in-ear design and headphone design has advanced so much that some things have become a little bit more broadly known. We've got a lot of more awesome like small businesses that are making cool headphone products and kind of understand it. So a lot of the cat's out of the bag. And manufacturers have to look further for secret sauce. What differentiates their products from another product? And like just because you could see all the parts of Sennheiser or Grell headphone doesn't mean you can make one yourself. And some of it, for example, Grell's noise annoyance reduction is patent pending. So like you can't, or unless you want to get sued. But in general, I think that being able to see the more guts leads to a more interesting story. And people are fascinated by engineers, and they want to be able to pick their minds and see kind of how their thought process is. And this exploded views, internal guts views, is an interesting way to get some insight into a really complex approach or a really simple approach. It's just, I think it's fascinating. How about you, Juan?
Yeah, so it is an interesting question. I think there's a couple ways to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a marketing perspective behind this, and that it,
You
you
can go
a
too
lot of
far for sure.
yeah, but a lot of a lot of manufacturers, and you kind of touched over this. They'll like the illustrative exploded view is always kind of a nice thing to have in my opinion, but um, I think a lot of manufacturers will kind of leverage that in their marketing in a way that, I mean, it can be useful, but sometimes they'll try like padding out parts that don't actually do anything. Like you see certain manufacturers, they'll kind of add like a whole bunch of little things into a design, and like, oh, look at this incredible innovation, and just so they it looks cool on an exploded view, but in reality it doesn't really do anything. So it's a give and take with anything. But one thing, like, out of my personal experience, during most of the early stages of my project, I was constantly just kind of putting out random progress updates and things like that, internal views, and and I found some, like people can give pretty good insight if you're putting out things like that during the development process, but it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because
Mm-hmm.
people will make assumptions on the product. I mean, like, sometimes, in a community like of enthusiasts like this one, um,
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot of people who they may have, like, they may see something like that. I don't know, like sometimes, people will make assumptions on an amplifier based on how the capacitors look or something like that.
Right.
Things
Is
like
it the
that.
right
They'll have
brand?
presumptions, or not even that. It's just like, oh, these components, this component looks too small, it can't possibly work, or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of people, and a lot of these presumptions are based on really really old ideas and things like that. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, and then you get criticism like that. But um,
Yeah.
so you have to be careful with how you approach it, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
And it ties in with what we were saying earlier about using a headphone as designed versus equalized. Sometimes
oh
Grell
yeah,
said it this way. He's like, sometimes you just gotta, the oracle has spoken, and you just kind of have to
yeah,
realize that, years of care went into this already. Careful decisions, and there's a lot that goes into things. You got,
yeah, yeah. I think it's mostly just overcoming, presumptions like that. Like, oh, some, like, a lot of people, they'll still claim that, DSP, that, I don't know, they'll have certain claims about things like DSP and whatnot, even though, most manufacturers and to most engineers, that's kind of just the way things are going. Um,
hmm
and headphones are getting better as a result. Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Oh, I
so
mean,
for some people, like, you'll see, you tell them it has, something like that, and they'll kind of scoff at it.
yeah. I mean, certain companies have done absolutely impressive things with paper drivers and really good DSP,
Yeah,
and that's like their business model.
yeah. I mean,
So
that's
yeah, sometimes you can
controversially
get.
so. I mean, that's Bose's entire business model.
I mean, I
Whether the
didn't say
DSP
a
works or not
name.
is a different question, but it's that is, that's yeah. There's companies like that that's what they're doing. That's their approach.
Right. And a lot of times, I think what you're one way to kind of put a bow on what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes the whole is a lot better than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
e- especially in audio.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What do you think about that, Smod?
Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, I agree with everything you guys said. I won't say much because I kind of spoke about this extensively last episode. But basically, to summarize my position as a consumer, being on the other side of the fence, is that if I'm going to spend a significant amount of my money, I want to see what I'm getting. And if a manufacturer is kind of hiding their, I'm not saying that I'm going to go to the dealer and tell them to bust out a screwdriver and open it in front of me. Of course not. Of course not. But
maybe you won.
I would.
But I mean, if they're at the point where they're not revealing or not willing to show me anything internally, then that does make me a bit suspicious, because as we know, there are a lot of kind of shoddy builders out there, people who are making things that are kind of not very good. And to some degree, if and I'm not an engineer, but I mean, I'm happy to pass pictures off to engineers and to people who know more than me, like, Parker's the classic guy, Parker and Fami, and if they're picking it apart, that I'm not saying that automatically makes it a bad device, but that may inform whether or not I use time to audition the device. I mean, I would consider what they're saying and other things as well. So anyway, the bottom line is I'd like to see what I'm getting. I like to see the internals. I like to share the internals with my engineer friends. And also you can tell, like, the just from the way something is made, you can tell if there's care put into it or not, in my opinion. So for example, if you look at Luxman, the way they put together their devices, it's like a point of pride for them, and it's meticulous and just beautiful. Exactly, just beautiful. And that's something I want to put my money into.
Steve Jobs.
Sorry?
But on the other hand, though, so if you look at an amplifier like Luxman, or it's obvious that in terms of the packaging, they've obviously put in a lot of good work to make that presentable and well built. But it still doesn't say anything about the actual performance of the product.
No, it does. It does. You're absolutely right, and that's why I wouldn't buy based on that, but I would at least be willing to audition based on that.
Yeah, but that's where it kind of ties into marketing. At least create the appearance that you're creating something superior.
No, fair. I don't
show that off.
I don't have a problem with that, as long as people are not buying based on the way something looks. I think that's a mistake. But if that's pushing, if you look at reviews from reviewers you trust, then the internals look well made. Some friends you trust are saying it's a good device. Engineers you trust are saying that it's well made. That inspires confidence to at least seek it out and try to listen to it and try to do maybe an in-home audition and things like that. Whereas when you have something like,
if the data backs up what they're doing, then obviously they're doing something right.
Right.
Well, I mean, you want to maybe you kind of want to look out for something that is a defect waiting to happen, or something that's going to go wrong. But you could also go a little bit too far into the realm of armchair engineers who, maybe they're good engineers, but they're trying to redesign your product, and it's like, look, this works, and it maybe adding that would fix something, but also mess something else up. And there's going to be a balance where you can see that, look, there's not obvious flaws and problems, but it's my design, not yours. Not that I'm actually designing anything. I'm just saying in general.
No, that's fair enough, and I appreciate that point. But let's flip it. Let's flip it on the other side of companies who will not reveal internals. Period. Macintosh, Coincident. Who else? I had a couple other names that. There's just some companies.
Nagra a little bit. I mean, they put shields over their shit just to hide what it is. But
yeah. So what can you guys speak to that? What do you think about those specific companies? Let's put aside the companies that will reveal it and the consequences of that, but the companies that refuse. The other one that comes to mind is the that one that was the class D Merrill Audio, that one. So Merrill Audio, I called the company and asked to see the internals of their preamp when I was trying to choose a preamp, and they would say they would get aggressive with me. They would get like rude on the phone, that offended that I would even ask, and then they're like, well, you don't need to see the internals or something. I mean, like, that puts me off as a consumer, because what are you? This is not like some kind of nuclear secret.
But is that you as a consumer? Or you as you as like a reviewer or an engineer, like, when you ask those questions, is it from the intent of I'm going to use this to enjoy listening to.
Yeah, it was the intent. I was potentially going to buy their preamp. I was honestly considering their preamp. Some of them came up on for sale at a good discount. So then I was like, oh well, let me consider this, and I wanted to look into it, and they would refuse. So what do you guys think about those specific companies that refuse to reveal anything? I mean, just look at Macintosh, the ultimate, the huge big audio company, and they hide everything.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tricky one. I mean,
it's really
if
loaded.
there was a
situation, it's a really loaded question.
Yeah, if there was a situation where, because I mean, I honestly, sometimes you from a little bit of a manufacturer's perspective, there are certain things that maybe you just consider that you don't really need to show them off. But I think the bigger problem is that if a manufacturer is saying, oh, trust me, bro, this is gonna, it's designed well, you don't have to look at anything. But then, if they don't provide any sort of data to show up like actually what it's doing, then I would have problems. I would have real problems with that. But in terms of like seeing what's inside the machine, leaving that to enthusiasts to pick them apart themselves might be a little bit of the better option. Like it's a little bit tricky to handle something like that.
So
it's
and then
like,
from my position, it's like, so to some extent, I started off this segment by saying I think it's really cool, and I think it shows a lot about as a designer to see the guts of a product, or I like seeing how something is made, or how a finished product looks on the inside, because it tells a story. And this relates to my role that I've had. Before I went on the other side of the table, I was just a user. But now that I'm industry insider, my role within the manufacturer is not to be the engineer or designer. I love to learn as much as I can, and I did measurements with Tacony and some mods here and there, and I'm learning more with Axel. But my role is mainly to be a marketer, and I have to ask what purpose that, I mean, you could say it's marketing, but really I'm just community management. I don't know. But you have to ask, when you get into this kind of discussion, what are you going to get out of it? Are you going to earn the customer's trust that you built something well and competent, and it's not dangerous or likely to die in a short order? Well, those are great things to answer. Yeah, totally. That's to a huge benefit to talk to. But sometimes when you go a little bit too much about, like, oh, there's one slightly new generation of chip, and it's like, oh, we started designing it 2 years ago and we've really optimized for this. Would you go back and forth on that minute of a level about something? Then sometimes it can really take the discussion away from the sound and the enjoyment and the purpose of the product, and get a little bit too focused on nuts and bolts, where you screwed it together, it holds together the enclosure either way. But if you're like, well, why didn't you use torque 6 instead of torque 7? No one's literally going that far, but you want to have a discussion, and you want to be open with people, but you want to talk about audio, and you want to talk about music, and you want to talk about the kind of experience you're trying to create for the customer. You want to talk about the experience and the story. You don't want to talk about you know a, a college dissertation on engineering. There's going to be some people who want that, and they should go to college, or maybe they've already gone to college and they already know, and that's awesome, and we need those people in the world. But for the customers, you want the conversation to be about the results. Do you agree, guys? Is that weird to say? Is that a totally different track than how you
No, it's
did
a
it the other
fair point.
episode?
It's a fair point. Yeah. It's a good counter argument.
Yeah. So in general, though, like, I'm not trying to defend the companies who don't show anything. And I just, as I said, I started by saying I think it's really cool to see how it is made. Um, and I'm not going to bash on another company or support another company. I don't want to start a fight. Again, that'd be a waste of my time. Um, but yeah, I think that, it's like, what is the value of the conversation? And, there's probably some in showing exploded views or talking about like, hey, we found this new chip and we're really excited about it, or uh, this, that, and the other thing. But you don't want to get too mired in it, especially if it's only serving a really small, really technical niche out of everyone you could be talking to all at one time.
All right. So our next topic is regarding speaker amps for headphones. This is something that has come up often, and basically, there's this notion that there are headphones that benefit from speaker amps, and not just headphones with very very low sensitivity like Susvara, but even dynamic driver headphones that do get benefits from the designs of speaker amps. What do you guys think about that? Let's start with Ko. Ko's been pretty quiet. What do you think about that, Ko?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was reading that question in the topic notes, and I was thinking, there's two things. You can take a pair of headphones, you can plug it into a speaker amp, and it will scale if it's a dynamic. Because I've noticed dynamic headphones scale quite well in comparison to planars. Or you can feed it into an amplifier, which is like, let's say, a current mode amplifier, which can also give you really, let's say, better sound compared to a conventional amplifier, which is rated for the similar power. But I guess in terms of speaker amplifier, I don't have a ton of experience. I don't really plug my headphones into speaker amplifiers, but what I do know is that a lot of people who have, let's say, 650s, they love plugging them, or let's say, I think you plug Atticuses into your pass amplifier, and you love the results. Yeah. So I think this could be particularly useful if it's a dynamic driver headphone. But I think when it comes to, let's say, a Meze Empyrean, I don't know if the results translate. Maybe they do. I know that.
What about a Hi-Fi Man HE6?
I would put that in the same category as Susvara. Yeah, exactly. I'd put the Susvara and HE6 in its own sort of category because it was designed for, I think
massive requirements.
Yeah, like I think I'm trying to think what the HF1000, the EF1000 amplifier power is. I think it's 12 watts or something like that. It's humongous. Yeah, so headphones like the HE6 and Susvara, they need it. Like that, they state it outright. You need a powerful amplifier. But for other headphones like the HE1000 SE or whatever, I don't know if there are benefits. Maybe there are. I just haven't got into it. But I do think for those kinds of headphones, I do think perhaps current mode amplification could be a better path to go down. But if you have a dynamic driver headphone, it's it's a known thing that stuff like 650s and Atticuses and whatnot do benefit from. But the thing is, if you do plug it into an amplifier, you'll need a very good attenuator or a very good preamp.
Yeah, very much so.
To deal with it, because I plugged in my Verite closed just for a laugh on the Bakun, and you don't get a lot of freedom with how you listen, because with the way the Bakun works, you have a series of step attenuators, and it's fixed. So for me, I like to listen at a quiet listening level. But with the Bakun, you get maybe 10 or so clicks, and then it just becomes ridiculous. So you have.
I thought you were going to say you plugged it into your Bakun and it went kaboom.
No, that would be really sad.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. No, but if you do that, it's great. But what I'd like to know, I'd like to throw a question back to people who use speaker amplifiers for headphones, because I don't do that often. For those who do, what sort of what's your experience with these preamplifiers, with these stepped attenuators that you use to control the volume? I mean, which ones, or I should say, how much of a bottleneck are they? Which ones increase the sound quality? Which ones hold it back? How do you pick the one that you need? How does that really work?
Are you asking like a broad question about how do preamps affect sound? Really?
I guess, within headphones. Yeah, within headphones, yeah.
I guess it's the same way.
The crazy thing is, right, is like the headphone amplifier market kind of came out because I mean, what is a headphone amplifier? It's basically a very low powered, hopefully, a fairly low noise power amplifier. It's not really that much different from a speaker amp. It just has to be able to handle some of
Yeah, it's
the
not really
output and
special.
it's supposed to handle the output impedance of a headphone amp more ideally than a speaker
Yeah.
amp. And some speaker amps can't handle, having the output impedance, of headphones, and it can mess up the amp. But the other thing is that speaker amplifiers in the last 20 years have dropped the THD to like ridiculously low levels. You look at the percentages and it's in the 0.0001% kind of thing for a lot of the normal modern solid state amplifiers. So you can
Definitely
just plug
inaudible.
headphones in with a converter, and with this you can plug them directly into the speaker tap. Sometimes if you're running HE6 and something like that, like lower impedance headphones. But there's sometimes you'll need a box to sort of protect, the I guess it's like the current swing you got to watch out for. So they'll have some little
Like a
boxes there.
transformer.
Not even a transformer, really.
No, just an attenuator.
An attenuator, exactly. That's just in between there.
resistor.
So yeah, a resistor in case, so that it can't go and send in tremendous amounts of current through it and make a bang. But yeah, they're not that special. Like, it's more of a thing where I think these headphone amps came into the market because the people just wanted more boxes. That was a big part of it. And speaker amps are more than capable of running most headphones, very, very well.
Yeah, I think it's an issue more so of this. I don't like. I don't really want to generalize, although like essentially what you're getting with a headphone amplifier is a very low noise floor and low power speaker amp for not a whole lot of money. That plug your headphones into and it works without any problems. You don't have to fiddle with anything, and you don't have to worry about usually sticking a resistor in front of your speaker amplifier and then screwing with the frequency response of your
Do
headphone
it
because
yourself kind of work.
now you're at 100 ohms before
but
the headphone,
one-
and then suddenly you have like a big mid bass boost on HD 600 something like that.
But I feel like
They don't have to
people who
deal
are
with-
using speaker amps for headphones aren't really at that entry level. Like, I can understand if someone's like, they don't have speakers and they just want something to drive their headphones that's, cleaner sounding than the motherboard. 100% understand. But if someone's got like a speaker system and a good amplifier, I feel like it's not a bad decision to make.
Yeah, it's not like you can't use it. I mean, I do that sometimes, but you know, I don't get too into this.
A little bit breaking
don't murder me, but there's probably like zero benefit aside from the practicality. Yeah. Well,
you imagine a headphone load is
there's
like
zero benefit
300 ohms.
aside from having a bigger box.
Yeah,
and I mean, if you're sticking a big resistor in front of like I don't know why people blame this, something about scaling with the dynamic drivers, but typically, a lot of dynamic headphones still have an impedance spike around the bass region and get boosted, and it'll sound a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting. If you stick a big resistor in front of the amplifier, like you would typically do on a speaker amp to, not blow out your headphones. And that's about it, I think.
Yeah, because you're basically increasing the output impedance a lot when you add that resistor.
Yeah.
So
you're literally increasing the output impedance, and that yeah.
So
if you look at an impedance curve of a headphone, the output impedance will just cause the frequency response of the headphone to shift more towards what the impedance response is doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that relates back to what Ko said about the planers not scaling
quote
up,
unquote scaling,
right?
Yes.
Because planers often have a very linear impedance across the frequency.
Typically, yes.
So they just don't have that kind of warmth and bloom and
they just don't
boost.
change.
Yeah, and there's actually a fair number of dynamic driver headphones that also have a flat impedance response, or linear, mostly linear.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
I have a feeling.
What?
Sorry, no, I was just gonna say, like, I have a feeling that on my headphone, people are gonna claim it doesn't scale because I linearize the impedance curve.
Well, there's
It'll be
two
interesting to see
ways.
responses on that.
Yeah, and I think there's two ways to look at scaling, right? There's people say, oh well, it doesn't scale up very much when you know buy a whole bunch of expensive boxes and you play around with it. Uh,
Uh,
well, I mean, you definitely want good audio, but there's two ways to look at scaling. One is that um, you feed it more and it just goes up and up and up in quality or some desirable attribute. Uh, but you have to keep buying more gear to push it further. And then the other way to look at scalability is just, well, it's easy to drive. It doesn't necessarily mean you definitely left something on the table in every case. Sometimes it just means it's easier to get to its full potential, and you don't have to work hard to get there. So, there's positives and negatives to it, but if you had, I think an ideal headphone would be one that was easy to amplify, and you're not trading off because of it. That's like is that I
the thing
think
is that
that
most headphones are so efficient these days.
yeah, they really are. Yeah, so if you think about a speaker, it has 8 or 4 ohms of impedance, and then you have to drive 50 or 100 watts into it, and that's because the sensitivity is really low. But as you said, uh, I mean, sorry, your voice is breaking up a little bit, so I'm kind of talking and trying to guess. But you have HD 600, 650, which is around 102, 103, 100, whatever decibels of sound pressure level sensitivity at 1 volt RMS and all that stuff. Um, that's a much more sensitive headphone than a speaker. A 32 ohm portable headphone will often have like 110 decibels, 112 decibels sound pressure level sensitivity. So uh, they are designed to need less power, which is great for mobile use, of course, battery life. Uh, but at some point, like Ko said, you only have a couple notches on the volume dial before you basically have an unusably loud um, device. Uh, yeah, impedance matters. Total distortion matters. Finding that sweet spot where the amp is not straining to provide all those things. It's like good operating sweet spot is a good thing, but um, at some point you're just putting way more power than you need into a headphone, and you can make it go kaboom. But I'm not the world's most authority on this. that's my take on it. I think that some people have better speaker amps than they do headphone amps, and that's where they get their quality. Or, like Juan said, you had a resistor, and it has a pleasant distortion with the impedance curve, and you like that. And if you like that, I mean, hey, the whole point of this is to enjoy entertainment of audio, correct? So if you like it, yeah, you've succeeded.
Yeah. Okay, I have to head out in like a second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Just some parting thought. Yeah, I don't really like to like debate too much on amplifiers and things like that because people have their own opinions on that, and I mean, to be honest, like I don't really think many of the things people claim are exactly necessary, but in most of this hobby is a lot of unnecessary purchases, to be honest. Um, yeah, I'm guilty of that. I have way too many headphones, but I think in this case, not always, but I think a lot of it is just down to the same thing with like people who claim big differences in how even cables sound sometimes. Where that if you spend enough money, or if you have a cooler system, sometimes just that in itself will make things sound better and more dynamic and whatnot. So I don't know.
You just reminded me of something Gisley told me yesterday. He said, actually, the battery life, the drop version of the TWS one is going to have an hour less battery life because the black paint or some kind of it causes a heat issue, and that reduces the battery life.
Yeah, the paint coating changes the internal vibration molecules of the battery and damps out the battery circuit and makes it less efficient.
But he was 100% kidding, and he totally had me going
Yeah,
too.
of course.
He totally had me going.
Yeah, it's a lot of things where it's it's
There's a lot of myths which sometimes are fun because they increase the depth of discussion.
They add memes too.
And they add memes. I love memes. I have a whole dedicated section on my Discord to audio memes. I love them. Yeah, but that sometimes they're, something you explore and you find out is a dead end and not really. I don't know. I'm not saying that speakers amps are bad, but yeah, there's reasons why.
It's like amplifiers, that's it.
Yeah.
It's an amplifier.
And some headphones just need a ton of power.
Sometimes. I don't know.
Most of the time you can get away with 500 watts or milliwatts.
Sometimes things are different, honestly. But I don't know. Most of the time, I think maybe we're looking a little bit too far into this for own sake.
Right, having too much fun. I did it again.
All right, I have to go catch a train. Thanks for having me all.
All right, Juan. Thanks a lot. You take care.
Thank you, Juan.
Yeah, man.
All right, perfect. And next up, let's go to 2-channel now for a while. We've been talking about headphones. Let's go to 2-channel. So what there's two topics here. They're kind of connected. One is the importance of the room size and room dimensions in a 2-channel system, and also the importance of speaker size with respect to room size. There's a lot of people that tend to have, including me, I'm guilty of this, having relatively big speakers in a small room. First of all, is there a downside to that? And is the downside confined to the bass frequencies, or is there other downsides to that? And then what's the advantage of big rooms? And are there certain dimensions that are more preferable to other dimensions, or certain geometries more preferable to other geometries?
Do you mind if I go first?
Go for it.
Yeah, so assuming that we are talking about floor standing speakers for this question, because if you're doing near field listening or that sort of thing, then I think it's not as relevant, your room size and dimensions, because your listening zone is a lot smaller. So if we're going to assume 2-channel floor standings, I think with room size, I can't really give an answer as to what the room dimension should be, but generally the manufacturer should give you the intended room dimension, and barring that, you should just be able to demo it, and it should sound. You should be able to get into that sort of sweet spot zone, and if you aren't able to get into that zone in the center of the room, then your room is too small, and then if your room is too large, then you won't be getting that that bass frequency hit, or you may not be getting that immersion of sound, and that you'll probably need to be pumping up your speakers up to a level that may exceed the manufacturer recommendations. And then when it comes to
distortion.
And then when it comes to the dimensions, generally you want a rectangle type of a room, so your speakers would be in on the length where the length is shorter part of the rectangle, and then you'd be sitting towards the back, and that would probably be the best. Granted, you can't guarantee that sort of room shape, this rectangular, and also you have to make sure your floor height. So I think you need, hold on, 5 plus 7.
Rectangular is not actually ideal. They actually say your walls shouldn't be parallel.
Oh, really?
More like an amphitheater, I guess.
Yeah, they're saying that it should sort of narrow in at one side, and that same with your ceiling should slope, whether it's forward, backwards, left or right. That will be better than if it's just a rectangular prism.
I thought it was you see, I think your height of your room is also pretty important. I think 12 foot, depending on the room size of your speaker. Like for my setup, it's around 12 foot. Yeah, 12 foot height for the room. In terms of the slope, I'm not really sure. Maybe you do need a slope, but when I was going around to all the different, speaker shops, I asked them, what sort of room do you need? And they said, best case scenario, you've got a, height. The height of your room is probably the most important thing. And then if you can get, a sort of a rectangle room versus, because a lot of the houses that a lot of the customers end up having is that they sort of recondition their sons or their children's old room, and it's like a square, and that doesn't really work too well. It's generally quite difficult to get the right room size or the right room proportions. What a lot of people end up doing is they end up digging underground and they create their own like subterranean listening room, which is something I'd hope to do some point in the future, maybe 7 years or so, 5 years or so. And then I could probably create the ultimate sort of thing. But yeah, generally, if you have a house and you don't have a concert room in your house, then you probably want something which isn't a square. And usually, what the most common sort of room they have is sort of like an L shape, and that L shape is and usually it's open.
Common.
Yeah, L shape is pretty common, and then it's also pretty open, so that they don't really have walls like surrounding everything. At least like half of the room is open, so you get a lot of these reflections like going out and spilling out into the other rooms.
And they're not effectively coming back.
Yeah, and it's very tricky to image around. So they end up putting like these hanging curtains and stuff, and these hanging tapestry. And it looks really odd, but that's generally what they have to do. And then you also have to keep in mind room reflections and that sort of thing. So you have to dampen your room somewhat, well enough. You don't want it completely dead. I assumed that you'd want a room that was dead like a studio, and you don't.
Yeah, studios aren't dead.
Oh, okay. Well, they're kind of flat.
Well, the recording part might be, but there's a little bit of wetness when they're doing the mixing and the final mastering.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. But yeah,
it's too unnerving to be in an anechoic room.
Yeah, it's super odd. Yeah, it's you can't really hear your voice project going through. It's super weird. So you want some sort of reflection going on in the room, but yeah, you want to control it as much as you can. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you're probably more qualified than me. I do have, a couple of my own home speakers, but I haven't explored it a lot. But in general, though, like a more academic view of it is that your walls and your room shape is kind of like a horn, right? So it's a nice thing about a rectangular shape is that it's a very predictable shape to imagine rays of sound. Everything comes in a kind of like a effect like a droplet hitting a water and spreading out in waves. But if you imagine, okay, it's coming from this direction from the speaker, and then it hits the wall here, and then everything comes back and propagates in a sweet spot, it's a little bit easier to predict that sweet spot in a more regular shaped room. But I imagine the most ideal shape for a room is kind of like a megaphone or something we figured out thousands of years ago with amphitheaters. An amphitheater is probably one of the most ideal acoustic shapes for a room. So you have sloped roof and sloped walls going away from the origin point where the speakers are. And that kind of helps to amplify and it also would diffuse the sweet spot to a wider area. But too big, too wide, you'll have too diffused of a sweet spot. But too square and not rectangular or too small, like you said, things won't come together and you won't have a sweet spot. You'll have lame bass. I think the size of a speaker, they basically have their own megaphone amphitheaters built in around the speaker cones, right? So it's trying to direct that sound, but it's still just trying to recreate quiet sounds and loud sounds. So it's, I don't know. I don't think that the proportionate size of speaker being too big for a small room is necessarily as much of a problem as just the room being too small to reflect sound at that distance. If you're going to be sitting back further away from it, if you're not doing like a near field listening situation and you want the little bit of room wetness and reflection. But I'm not an expert.
These comments I've been making, I've been assuming that these are cabinet speakers and they're not open baffle, because those sort of speakers are highly dependent on the room more. They're dependent on the room more because the room is sort of the cabinet for those kinds of speakers. And those sorts of speakers, I think, are probably some of the best I've heard for price to performance, for what it's worth.
What are you guys' thoughts on infinite baffle?
Infinite baffle?
I'm not familiar.
It's like when you soffit mount the speaker, basically, so the baffle is like the entire rear wall. So this is how most pro audio studios, how most mixing and mastering people do it. They won't put the speaker off the wall. They'll cut a hole in the wall and mount the speaker in the wall so that the baffle is as wide as the rear wall, and then
Oh wow,
that's interesting.
That's actually probably the best way to get the best sound, is to do the infinite baffle, is to soffit mount.
I have two thoughts on that. One is that generally a lot of people say in a general home installation, when I went to like Best Buy and stuff, they're like, well, you can get built-in wall speakers, but they're not going to sound as good as speakers that you can move 2 or 3 feet into the room. However, what you're saying is that the back of the speaker's open, and basically what you're doing and what you're suggesting is they're getting rid and they're dumping all the back waves that come off of the driver, because the driver emits sound 360 degrees all directions in a sphere. But if you don't have to deal with the back wave, you're just infinite baffle sending it away to nothing. You don't have to deal with it. Then you're just controlling the waves that are coming out the front, and you're it's a way to control it. It's an interesting thought experiment. And I'm sure people smarter than me have figured out that is better, but that's how it works. I think.
Zach, quick question. I put a picture of what I think you're talking about in general. Is that correct?
In general.
That's an open baffle, so that's not infinite baffle.
Oh, that's
so
not
just
infinite.
search soffit mount speaker,
okay.
SOFIT, and it'll show you basically this is basically the best way you can mount drivers if you want the most accurate sort of sound with minimizing, especially in a smaller room. It'll minimize most of those reflections and nulls that you get off, as EV was suggesting, sound traveling behind the speaker and bouncing around. This is the way.
God damn.
This is the way.
So open baffle does sort of play on this a little bit with its design, because it ends up being not an infinite baffle, but the baffles, like, you can make the baffle enormous. But no, it's just this for me is like the answer to what I think Smod is asking, like, how do you get a good sound in a small room? And these small rooms that we're talking about here are more like pro audio or mixing and mastering rooms. So these guys, they don't have much space, because they probably have like a foot or maybe 2 feet of like glass wall insulation in every direction, because they cannot have external sounds leaking into this space when they're recording or when they're doing playback. So they probably started off with an enormous room, and to make it actually completely soundproof, to make the room so that they get no external noise in there, they would have used an enormous amount of absorption material. So this is it's just more, I wanted to see what you guys thought, or if you were aware of this solution for this problem. But my thoughts are that
a lot of good thoughts. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah,
so, you're right. It's needs driven, and I assume that they're essentially using near field speakers instead of loudspeakers. A monitor.
Go look at look at the soffit mount. They use ATC. They'll mount. Anything that was a JBL bookshelf speaker, which some of those were 100 kilogram speakers per channel, they were soffit mounting them. And if you go look at some of the best theaters in the world, they'll use like something like a JBL M2, and they'll put in like, I don't know, 9 of them, soffit mount them everywhere. There's another really interesting room. It's an anechoic chamber where they've got ATCs surround, and they've got them like mounted off the roof. Anechoic chamber. I'll find a picture of this. It's pretty hectic. I'll chuck it in general.
And while you're getting that up, I'll just, in general, for anyone who's listening and not looking at things and not sure what an anechoic chamber is, that's just like one of those rooms with tons of foam, spikes, or other kinds of irregular things that capture all sound reflections. And so a very dry room is a room that doesn't have any sound echoes or reverberations because it's all absorbed by the walls. And that's an anechoic chamber.
I don't think I'm actually thinking of an anechoic chamber anyway. I'm thinking of this, it's like a crazy diffusion. The whole room is filled with those tiny wood spikes. So this is, there's a shot from the room, but I can't actually find the picture of all of, I'll post this in now. Where is this? I'll find it in a sec. So the whole room, every single wall is covered in that. So this is one of the rooms ATC, I think, used to test some of their speakers. It might be a university using it. I'm trying to find it. I'll find it somewhere. Give me a sec. Ah, yeah, found it. Blackbird Studio. Holy hell. You gotta see this room. This is crazy.
So we would tell people to Google Blackbird Studio?
No, I'm going to post the image for you guys. I'm just trying to open it. I mean, our internet's not that fast in Australia. We're pretty backwards in a lot of ways.
I mean, just because your toilet's flushing the other direction doesn't mean you're backwards.
I think a lot of Americans have talked about installing the reverse flushy thing, not as a joke, just to, they don't want to.
Oh, wow.
There
that
you go.
So, intense.
Look at that. In general or what?
It's in general, yeah.
It's in general.
So this is a room where they've got an enormous amount of absorption in the walls and a little bit on the surface, but to try and make the room not sound as dead, they've gone and used an insane amount of diffusion. And the effect is pretty trippy. I wouldn't want to dust it. I think that would be a pain in the backside. But I dream of hearing this room one day. It would be incredible.
Yeah,
but yeah, not a soffit mount solution, but this is an interesting solution anyway.
For anyone who can't see it, I mean, maybe you can. The visual is of like a pretty big speaker or a bunch of speakers, some mounted on the ceiling, and then just like a forest of tiny rectangular rods that are kind of sticking out almost like fur. Or
all the different lengths to basically scatter sound.
That image is basically Smod's near-field listening setup in 10 years.
Probably. Yeah, I have it. I clicked on it in the stream, so people should be able to see it if they're watching.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just love that they've got 15 ATC speakers as well, pointed at one person.
That person's a king or queen.
So going back to the question, I think in my experience, the question that they was talking about was big speakers and speaker dimensions and rooms. And I had a unique experience where I heard the JBL 4367s, which is kind of like a passive version of the M2, which is one of JBL's flagship, speakers for the pro audio, and some people use them in the hi-fi market. I heard it originally in a massive room with the ceilings would have been, I don't know, nearly 30 foot. It was a very tall room. It was a very long and wide room as well. And it sounded insane. The dynamics were incredible. And I was sold. I wanted to buy the speaker immediately. I was like, I need to own this. I need this at home. And I couldn't afford it. It was too much money. So I waited about a year and I started talking to dealers locally and I found the same speaker and I wanted to go and hear it again because I knew the room that I had wasn't as epic as the room that I heard it in originally. So I wanted to see what is the speaker capable of in a less ideal room. So fortunately, the mob down the road that was stocking them had a pretty long and narrow and a very low ceiling. I'd say the ceiling would have been about 9 to 10 feet. So that's not that low, but it's pretty consumer level. But the room was kind of long. It would have been about, I don't know, I'm trying to convert to metric on imperial on the fly. Yeah. About 40 foot long. It was quite a long room, like 10, 12 meters, but then it was quite narrow. I'd say, 15 feet wide. So it was kind of long, skinny, and not that high. Anyway, the sound was completely different. Like the dynamics were completely squashed. The mid-range was kind of a bit wonkier. It's the same speaker, exactly the same speaker, driven by a similar level gear, and the room played such a role that I was like, I can still hear the potential of the speaker, but I just know that this speaker, because it's a horn speaker, it's got a horn waveguide, it needs a certain amount of breathing space. You're starting to get nulls and reflections that are going to be very unfavorable. So I don't know. I think, and that's
It didn't do it, huh?
It didn't work, and I knew that the room that I had at home wasn't going to be as long and skinny. It was going to be less compromised that way, but the dimensions were probably going to be smaller than either room, and I just felt like there's just no way. This speaker it needs to be in a church, or it needs to be in like some massive
holy experience.
It needs to be in a really, really big room to work.
Yeah.
So, and it was, other speakers seem to be less prone to nulls, or like the nulls and stuff don't bother you as much in different rooms or with different speakers. So, I don't know. I think sometimes you have to make the room as big as you can. Honestly, I think bigger is definitely better. I have heard some very good systems in small rooms in Japan and Singapore, but these guys were kind of doing the infinite baffle thing where the speakers were nearly touching, and you were listening in a near to midfield kind of environment. But as soon as you go to beyond midfield and you have the space, I feel like dynamics are always going to be better in a bigger room. And I mean, how big is too big? I think I'm going to go back to metrics because I get too confused here. I'd say my ideal room would probably be about 12 meters long and about 7 meters wide. That's like the perfect room with a ceiling 3 to 4 meters tall. And I think if you want to just times by 3.5-ish, that's roughly going to Imperial. So I'd like a room about that big one day, but it's trying to build that. You'd need a shed or do the underground man cave thing, like Ko was talking about. But I think you can get away with a smaller room sometimes, but it depends on the speaker. It depends how much you're aware of nulls, because sometimes nulls don't worry people. You go see the measurements of their room and they're like, oh yeah, it sounds great, and you're like looking at this 30 dB null at 60 to 70 hertz, and they're like, oh, okay, well, the person doesn't care about that, which is fine, like if someone's happy with that. But you can easily measure nulls these days. You just buy a cheap mic, measure it, and go, oh look, we've got this problem. And you can try to fix it with treatment, but those sort of nulls, you need like several fridge-sized bass traps to control a null like that at the minimum in the corners. So room plays a role, speaker plays a role, personal preference plays a role, whether you can cope or deal with the nulls and the premature reflections causing issues sometimes. But I don't know.
Yeah,
Again, personal preference.
Yeah, very much. I just had a sneezing fit and I muted myself in time, but now that I'm done sneezing, you sound a little different to me.
Your ears are cleared, mate.
All right. Yeah, I mean, my experience with room size is, as Zek said, bigger is better. I've heard my specific speakers, obviously in my room, which is just a small 8 by 16 by 12 bedroom, and they sound very good. But at the dealer, he had a huge room, like probably a 30 by 40 foot room or even bigger, and it wasn't even ideal. It was just off in one corner, and it sounded like a totally different speaker. So yeah, big seems to be very good to allow kind of for sound to propagate and create bigger, more appropriately sized images and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, the concept of a big speaker in a small room is one that fascinates me, because I mean most people would argue that it's not a smart thing to do, but then you do once in a while get certain people who do it and are really happy with it. One of the guys that comes to mind is the I forgot his name, but the guy who runs Tecton speakers, and he's firmly is against the idea that certain speakers can be too big for a room sonically. And he thinks that I mean, obviously he's selling a product, so you have to take it with a grain of salt, but he thinks that get huge towers for your room if you're aesthetically okay with it, because it'll create a sound with a big sense of scale. He has a YouTube video on that, actually. So that's interesting. And then another dealer I remember, she kind of put her Focal Stella Utopias in a client's room, which was like 10 by or 12 by 12 by 8, or like a really small closet sized room, and apparently in your field it's like so epic or something like that. So it's interesting. But
I'm not
yeah.
I'm not kidding you, but there's a similar story I have with my dealer. This guy, one of his clients bought the Wilson XVX Chronosonics, and if you guys don't know, that's a $330,000 loudspeaker by Wilson, and he has a room that's about half my size, and as Smod said, sort of like a closet, and it's it has Ypsilon monoblocks, the whole deal, probably a $1 million system, close to $1 million. Yeah, and it just makes no sense, because if you look at that speaker, it's about 6'4", and he has it in a space that you could probably fit 5 people end to end. Like it's really, it's a small space. It's small as hell, and yet some people just go for it. And when he asked, and what was interesting was when I asked him, why do you have clients that do this? Like, you could have gotten a speaker that cost a tenth of it, and probably even cheaper, and gotten really good results. And he said, well, he's getting to that age. He's getting older, and his wife isn't going to be as accommodating and allow him to clear out a few rooms and build the real room of his dreams. So he just wants to just have fun and just go for it, and screw it. I'm gonna die soon. Might as well just have it.
Moment for the art of YOLO.
The art of it. Yeah. So it's kind of bittersweet, because yeah, he gets to have fun, but talk about wasted money there.
Yeah, it's especially, I don't know how often you entertain people in your own house to share your speakers. I could barely get people to come over to my place. I'm like, hey, I've got we can all listen to the same headphones. Like, I have 3 over $1,000 headphones. We can all have a really good experience. I've even, with the Smith Realizer, we can all hear crazy 3D. But I don't know, it's hard to get people. And not just because of COVID, even before then. Maybe it's my personality. But if you could afford $1,000 speakers, and if it was something that he wanted to do in his golden years, as you will, yeah, I don't know. You gotta eventually just make it work. The good thing is that I guess you can make it work to some degree. Like, it may not be perfect, but you can still have a lot of fun with it. And wasn't someone else on that other Discord server? Flash. Wasn't he talking about how it's like, sometimes instead of just holding yourself back from enjoying a speaker, like if you don't have speakers yet because you feel like, oh, I just can't. As long as you're not getting the neighbors knocking on your door, sometimes it's just, if you have the funds, maybe you can still enjoy it, even if you have to grow into a different space or room later.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, enjoy audio. Like, so people say like, oh, I could never spend this much money on an audio. It's just a luxury. I can't do that. And I understand, I have a very limited budget. It's much easier to stay above water now. That's wonderful. But to everyone that says like, I only want to spend, $50 or $12 on audio. Okay, but if you're working and you're earning your money and your money is so important to you, you can't take it with you. So, what are you earning your money for? Yeah, you got to eat, you got to take care of yourself, but you kind of want to enjoy your time on this earth too. I don't know. I loved when you had the Art of the YOLO talk, Co. I listened to that and I was like, yeah, because I think you want to be appropriate, but sometimes you just gotta have fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so this is our last topic before we close it out with Quote Co's Corner, and that's about. Well, actually, let's see. We have kind of 2 things we could do. Do you guys want to do the noise? Evie, you want to do the noise canceling, or you want to do the timbre discussion? What do you guys think?
I think we have plenty of stuff to talk about, but maybe I could just ask it as a question at the end of the episode, and then we can come and readdress it next week, and people have something to think about between this week and the next.
Okay, that's fine. That's fair enough.
My corner maybe around 20 minutes or so, just FYI.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Let's get in just to this last thing that I put in there. I don't think it'll be that long. So basically, when you're assessing different qualities in audio and different things that are important to you, dynamics, micro, macro, detail, things like that. The thing that comes up a lot in Sonic Visions is timbre and how important timbre is. So I just wanted to kind of focus on that and ask you guys personally, how important is timbre for you? Is it like the number one thing you kind of listen for? Does it overrule? Like, are you less willing to make sacrifices on it? How does it factor into your choices of also headphones and especially headphone technology, where commonly planars are regarded as having poorer timbre than dynamics, things like that?
Obviously, it's personal. I'm going to jump in and say some stuff, but I hopefully won't take too long. Yeah, I mean, it's no matter what I say, it's important. As far as being willing to trade timbre for other things, it's tough. I would say I am a soundstage and imaging junkie. I really like that sense of being able to perceive different distances and separating things, because it's almost like VR for audio. And especially when I was in apartments and dorm rooms and by myself, the ability to transport myself to a room full of energy with lots of music and creative people and things like that. It's great to go on that kind of an audio vacation. And I felt like soundstage was a way to get there. However, you can't have realism without good timbre either. And a couple of headphones for me just have absolutely like, what happened here? Like, why does this sound so funky? I've had some experiences with like an HD 650 where it was plugged into. I really like my DAP, my Sony ZX300, and even on balanced output, it just didn't have enough uh, oomph to drive it right. So what it turned the HD 650 and the HD 800 into was this weird, very digital sounding, kind of plasticky, metallic-y, funky, digital. Didn't sound like an accurate representation. And I would rather use a less expensive headphone that maybe trades off some of the soundstage to have something sound a little bit more organic and rich. So I used to say that, I assumed timbre was going to be pretty good or really good, and I wanted to push the envelope more in soundstage. But when push comes to shove, I think timbre in the end is like a basic requirement that I would always say is something I like. And I've also learned that, something that has good timbre for me, or bad timbre for me, like nothing against the hi-fi man or biodynamic, but I can't, they feel thin and tinny to me and squishy and soft, or a little bit, just a little bit unnatural to my ears and the way my shape of my ears are. I use small ear tips. I have small ear canals. That means it has a resonance and enhances some upper mids and lower treble for me, and this, that, and the other thing. It's not working for me, but I know those same headphones work well for other people. But yeah, sometimes when the timbre is just right, it can blow everything else away. And how about you, Ko? Or how about you, Ko or Smot? Or Zach?
Yeah, and Zach too. Yeah. What about you guys? Ko and Zach? What's your opinion?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess for me, what comes first? I would say timbre comes first. and then tonality comes second. But we're talking, small gap between the two. So if you, for example, I took delivery of the Meze Lyric just a couple of weeks ago, and the planar timbre is not my cup of tea. However, the tonality of Meze and the way they tune stuff is phenomenal, and I love it. But again, given the choice, would I want to own, let's say, a Verite Closed or an HD800S over a Lyric? I would pick one of those two over the Lyric, simply because I prefer the slam, the texture from a dynamic driver over what a planar can do. Even if the planar is tuned really well, a planar just doesn't have that same hit, I would say, or impact as a dynamic does. And also, I guess the thing is, there's a lot of options out. So if you're looking for, let's say, if you're looking for like a more budget-friendly set, you automatically probably going to be relegated to a lot of dynamic drivers. It's not a bad thing, because dynamic drivers, in my opinion, dynamic driver headphones are the best out there. I've tried almost everything, and the only planar which really satisfies me to as much as a dynamic is the Susvara. And the Lyric is just come on the block, and that is also quite good. The Lyric and the Elite, but taking price into account, I would much rather own, let's say, an HD800S over either of those. So yeah, timbre for me, I would say translates the enjoyment of the music, the way the music is rendered, and the way, let's say, for me, it's piano. Piano is probably the number one thing I test all my gear on. If it can't do piano, it's disqualified. Unless it's a niche headphone. So something, let's say, like a Phil phone, I am not going to be using that for piano. But for something like an HD800S or a Verite, if it can't hit piano the way I want it to hit, it's out. And all the headphones, like, let's say, Lyric and HD800S and all of that, the way piano hits, I haven't found a planar except Susvara that can render organic instruments like piano, guitar, or etc. like a dynamic. And the only headphone which can really compete is a Susvara, and I think that says a lot.
Yeah, it's a very interesting discussion with drivers, because in a lot of ways, dynamic drivers are harder to manufacture. Like the overall industry size of dynamic drivers is way, way bigger and at way more price points than planar drivers. And I'm not going to, diss on planars at all. But people assume that because it is a little bit more rare, it is a little bit more boutique, that it's automatically better. There's, in the end, they're kind of pushing airwaves. They're making vibrations in the air, and there's certain trade-offs. A planar has to be larger surface area to displace as much air as a dynamic that can move further out and in, just because of how they're designed and how magnets get in the way. It's very interesting, but dynamics, when you get for a cheap one, you're generally going to a few OEMs that are supplying a dynamic driver at huge quantities to drive the cost down, whereas a planar, I don't know if anyone makes a planar less expensive than Foster, but in general, planars are more expensive for the same for a similar performance, and so much goes into the ear cup and the baffling and design around the driver to really create that timbre. But yeah, applause to people who can do it. And I don't know, I thought, like, for example, and not everyone is going to agree with me, the open ether I thought had pretty good timbre. Like, I actually really, really liked that. And the ether closed was so similar, but it just didn't quite have the same timbre, and it was like, I can't do this. Whereas the open ether was like competing with me with the 800 for my attention, but the 800 worn out. That's just personal. And of course, the ethers are planar magnetic drivers with Dan Clark's accordion style VTech.
So is the ether open, right? Is it the flow or is it the non-flow?
I formed my opinion before the flows came out.
Okay.
And the flow did not destroy what I liked about it, and so it got a little bit more fun. I've liked Dan Clark's improvements,
Okay. Yep.
but it hasn't made me buy new headphones yet. And now that I finally have some money, um, just a bit, uh, my next purchase is going to be a cable to kind of finish off my
Nice.
HD 800 setup than it is to buy another flagship headphone, because it's so close to everything I want that just a small tweak.
Yeah.
I'm at the point where a small difference makes all the difference.
Hmm.
That's where I'm at.
That's awesome. That's quite frankly, that's the best place to be.
Well, I mean, it is sad though sometimes, thinking about Endgame is
Mm.
that, well, I mean, it was kind of fun to go on the journey. It was kind of fun to have the chase. So I think that even after I did perfect my setup, I would still mushroom out in a chatter of headphones and maybe speakers and see what else is out there. Even though I can come back to one that maybe satisfies me, I still I want to explore. Boldly go where no one has gone before. But
Well,
yeah,
you still have HD 820, so you have some ways to improve. Woo.
I can spray paint a gold. Admit it. If you could win the Thanksgiving giveaway HD 820, you might give it a second thought since you like the 800S.
You know what? I absolutely would. I really would. But I really would. But the thing is, how would you? Okay, so I did try to get
Off topic.
I tried to get a good seal on the HD 820 at CanJam for about 10, 15 minutes, and I just couldn't. And I don't know what magic you do to get a good seal.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean, like I say, ears are different. It is possible that maybe there isn't a spot for you. I don't know. It's a shame. Which CanJam was it? If you don't mind me asking.
Sorry. Yeah, the latest CanJam.
Oh, you were at SoCal?
Yeah, I popped in just for an hour.
Oh, damn! I was there. We might have met.
Oh shit.
I was at the Source AV's booth because Sennheiser
really?
backed out. Yeah, only a few people wanted to hear the 820 because, of course, it is kind of old hat at this point.
Gotcha.
The byline, the story of the HD 820 is kind of already written, and people kind of come to a consensus that it's like, well, we don't want to pay that much, and we, like you, some people have some issues with seal and placement, or maybe it just doesn't suit their ears.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw it when it was released, I wanted to get it because the design was just really, really good.
It is cool. It does look like Darth Vader's private headphones.
Absolutely. And then the
Um,
gold.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason why Co is, if for a listener who doesn't know the inside story, I told Co the first time that I heard the HD 820, I hated it. It was like, I'm sorry, like, this is a prototype. I know you've been working really hard on this for a couple years now, but like, this ain't doing it for me. It's a little bit cold. It's a little bit boring, and like, I want this to do well for you, but I'm gonna tell you honestly, I don't feel like it's there for me. And they're like, oh, well, I'm sorry, but they were kind of like, we've listened to it and we think it sounds good here. Like, all right, well, I don't have anything to do for the next 3 hours, so let me just keep listening. And I had a couple other headphones there. The thing about, Sennheiser doesn't only have Sennheiser headphones in their headquarters, and I was managing to visit them in Germany. So I was hearing some other brands, and there was this other one that was really strong in the bass, and that was something I felt like the 800S and the 820 was lacking. So like going from the 820 to that, this bass heavy headphone was like, wow, there's all the excitement, there's all the fun, but it was a lot. And then we tried another headphone, which it's kind of funny because in general on frequency response charts, you'd say, oh, that's a pretty V-shaped headphone. And it's well known to be pretty strong in bass too, but it wasn't, it felt more balanced than the first really bass strong headphone I heard. And I don't want to speak badly of any of these companies because your differences, other people are going to love them. But yeah, I was preferring this other one, and it became, it's like, well, maybe I won't buy this Sennheiser, but someday I'm going to need a closed headphone. This old Denon D7000 is going to be, my top pick. But then I went back to the 820, and I'm like, all right, I don't know, I'm still here. I'm going to listen. And, they really believe in this. So what's going on? And I just spent a while fiddling with it. And at some point, I put my ears basically in the back top corner, which for my ears, bounced the waves around in a certain way and maybe intercepted. Maybe I was wearing it wrong, but it seemed to intercept a lot more bass. And suddenly there was some richness. Suddenly there was some magic, but it ended up being a lot more balanced with the mids and the highs than the Denon, and especially the first one that was really strong bass were doing. And suddenly it was like, wow, this has, a little bit less leakage, really cool design, really lightweight, really comfortable. And I'm getting kind of an HD 800S with more bass. And for me, that was hitting the spot in a way that I was kind of like, it was hitting a timbre, and it was hitting a richness, a bit of magic that I was finding a little bit more satisfying than the HD 800. And I was thinking, well, I could sell the 800 and get a long way to get close to this, and then I could use this headphone in almost any situation. I was worried because it was a pre-production. It was still like yellow because it was just raw, pure resin. How is the final version going to sound? And Axel was talking about how he was, this is a prototype. We got a couple more revisions, and we went to Can Jam, New York City, and he's like, yeah, this is almost ready, but I actually have a prototype, 2 more revisions later back in the lab. That's like, this is almost there, but not quite there yet. But every stage I could go and find that sweet spot. And for me, I was getting what I wanted out of it. But he keeps trying to find that same spot. And I respect it. If he doesn't find it, it's frustrating for both the consumer and the manufacturer and the retailer and everybody if you spend time trying something. And, it's great to have the experience, but it sucks to go through a return.
Yeah, I want to
So,
love it because I want the
yeah.
matching pair. I want the open, I want the closed. But
Yeah, well, I like having the matching pair. If you could come to my house, I'd share with you. I'm listening on a current drive headphone amp, and I don't necessarily think that they're always better. But yeah, the setup I've been hearing it on is pretty darn good, and I don't know. It may still be bass light for some people who expect more bass in a closed headphone, but a closed headphone needs like vents. A closed headphone needs some air movement to be able to push the air without having it resist the action of the driver and resist the especially the propagation of low end. And again, I'm not an engineer, so I might even be making mistakes in saying all this. But yeah, the HD 820 has like bass tubes that they block highs from exiting and entering, but the low end is still able to kind of be vented in a kind of virtual way. And that allows them to keep it from having too much or too little bass. There's a lot that goes into that design beyond a glass disc. And Sennheiser didn't want to do the exploded view and show the whole story. And predictably, like we said at the beginning of the episode, everyone's like, well, I don't know. This feels like Wizard of Oz. I don't know what's behind the curtain. And, when they saw a very strange frequency response graph, they're like, well, this can't be right. This has got to be a mistake. This has got to be wrong. And it's easier to say, well, it's too expensive and the graph looks wrong. I'm not going to waste my time on it. And I feel worse because in Ko's situation, he has given it the time, but still hasn't found a fit that seems to bring it for him. So, it's a bit of an unfortunate misstep. I found a place with it that I really, really, really like it. But yeah, it is unfortunate that it's not all things for all people.
All right.
And a lot of people wanted a HD 800, HD 900S, and it just wasn't that.
Zach, any opinion on timbre?
Yeah, sorry, I got kind of so lost in what we were talking.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do that.
That's all right. That's okay. I guess timbre is very important to most of us. It's, we as audio geeks kind of want to hear beyond just, we can hear the song, we kind of want to be able to hear, the piano, but not just the piano, what kind of boards, what kind of materials it's made of, when I use a few tracks for reference tracks, like I listen to some Jacqueline Dupre tracks from the 1950s and 60s, which is surprisingly, actually it might be a bit later than that, but they're recorded really well, and you can hear she plays two different cellos over the years. She plays a Davidoff and a Stradivari variant, and you can hear, because they don't tell you which one she's using at different times. You can kind of guess by the timestamps which one she is using, but you can hear it when you're listening. And I think that's, you need a headphone or a speaker driver that's capable of rendering that information. And so that's I guess a mixture of micro detail and beyond micro detail, what people call plankton in some communities, and then about macro dynamics, being able to render all that information. I think then you go into your textural stuff, and for me that's more about how multiple instruments in like I guess like in a poly sort of environment come together, and I like to be able to hear not just that there's multiple instruments, but what those instruments are doing. And a good track to test that timbre would be the old Hotel California, Hell Freezes Over. You can hear that, you can hear there's a maraca, right? But like on a good system, you can kind of hear the beads, and you can kind of guesstimate the shape and size of what he's shaking. And I think that for me goes beyond just being like, oh yeah, I hear a maraca, great, cool, we can hear he's shaking something roughly over there. But if you want to go beyond that, you want to kind of be able to guess the size of the bead, or or the size of the instrument, or what they're made of, how soft they are, how hard they are, and all that sort of stuff comes together to create a really good image. And 90% of people don't care about that stuff. That's almost like being, the people who are nervosa about the equipment and everything else. But I don't know. For me, when I listen to music, I listen for that stuff. Like that's, the tracks I listen to and the music I'm drawn to does that stuff well. The recording highlights it, and it's there. And there's, when I listen really hard, there's not like a grain or an etch or a background hiss, or, I don't like where a lot of artists these days play the vinyl kind of crackling in the background, and like they do it for ambience or to make it sound like something, but I almost feel like they're adding this layer to hide the fact that the recording just isn't that crash hot. So they're like, let's just put our own gray ground in. So I don't know, timbre is important to me. Rendering it, some headphone, it doesn't seem to be exclusively that the more detailed the headphone, the better the timbre is. Like you compare HD 800 and HD 650, and most people argue that the 650 is probably has more a nicer and probably a more real timbre. It sounds more like the instruments sound like they should, whereas the HD 800 is probably better at rendering stuff like brass and the reeds, but it doesn't sound quite as nice. So there's sometimes a shrillness and a honkiness, which is again timbral information that's important and realistic to what was recorded, but some people don't find it pleasant and tend to want to listen to timbral differences that are softer and rounder, and sweeter or soft, more enjoyable, and I think that's where audio gets really interesting, in that some people want the timbre to sound as it was recorded, and other people want to mess with it so it sounds nice to their ear. And of course, then you got to throw in, psychoacoustics, and then, anatomical differences in ear canal shape, length, distance, as well as eardrum thickness. That's going to play a role. There's just too many factors to kind of just be like, oh yeah, let's just do a parametric EQ, that'll fix it. But yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and timbre is important to me. But finding something that has perfect timbre as well as being the most detailed and dynamic, they seem to be very difficult to do them all at once. So you seem to sort of have to pick the compromises you're most comfortable with, which is something I'll say in audio constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my thoughts.
Appreciate it, Zach. Very nicely put. So, yeah, I think we're going to close it out now with Ko's Corner, our kind of esteemed IEM expert and for the guy to go to for IEM and portable discussion. So, Ko, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so some cool news. I had a Jerry Harvey Jolene Universal ordered in a couple of weeks ago, but this week I switched it to a custom, and I went to their studio in Burbank to get my ear impressions done, and all of that. And I must say, it's a really cool studio, and the process of getting your ear impressions is is very, very fun.
It's intense.
So,
did you already get
yeah.
your headphone? Did they finish the custom?
No, they haven't even started because I ordered the universals 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and they need to. They don't have them. So when Jerry Harvey advertises they have something available, it means what they really mean is that they have it available for you to buy. It's not in stock, so they have to make it.
For sure.
And yeah, and making
custom.
Well, no, I mean the universals should have been made, in my opinion. Like they're universals, they should have been made.
Oh, well, yeah, Universal should be, yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't. They handle them like a CIAM. So if you order Universal, they have to then make it. So it takes about they say maximum 20 business days. So I was waiting on my second week, and Jerry Harvey, like if you try and phone the customer support, if you get through, they're very nice people. The people are very nice, but it's very hard to get them to respond to you via email, and they're not really there all hours of the day for the phone support. So I was getting to a point where I was like, you know what, forget it. This is getting ridiculous. It's taken so long. I'm just going to get custom. And I was lucky enough that I live somewhere close to their to their Burbank studio, which is where basically nearly all of Hollywood go to get their impressions done for Jerry Harvey IMs. Yeah. So and that was a lot of fun. What they do, they sort of, if you guys don't know, to get custom IMs, you have to get impressions of your ears. And so they inject your ear. What they do first, they clean your ear for any wax. And before the audiologist examined me, she said, depending, like you may need to go to need to go to another audiologist to get your ear cleaned if you have severe impaction, etc.
That happened to me.
Oh damn, yeah. So I was thinking like, oh crap, I have to get this delayed even more. And so she started examining, and then she said, oh no, you're actually really, really clean. So
Lucky
thank goodness.
you.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah. So all she had to do was to take out some wax that was like on the outer edge coating or so. I don't know. So that was done in like 2 minutes. And then with the impressions, they inject your ear full of this foam, this expanding foam substance, and it's
Did you
very
put a thingy
odd.
in your mouth?
Yes. We had to get the foam block in the mouth for that. And when they put the needle, or sorry, what happens is they have this string. At the end of the string, they have this cotton ball. They have to shove this cotton ball deep into your ear, and that was probably the most painful part for me, because it went deeper than any IM I've ever had. It's like the etymonic IMs where you have to shove them all the way in. Yeah, so it's kind of like that. And I was like, oh shit, this is terrible. And she said, no, you'll be fine. It'll be over in like 5 seconds. And then the minute she started filling it up, you could hear like half the room just go dead. It was so weird. Like, and then the other ear, she puts it in, and then everything's just completely muffled. Like, completely, it's an unbelievable feeling. And then she took out she let it set for maybe 5 minutes. She takes it out. And that was a lot of fun. So my impressions are now either in a plane on FedEx, or it's either already in Florida. So yeah, it should be ready to go, and I should be getting custom Jolene's with the gold configuration. Surprisingly enough, they have two signature designs. One of them silver, one is gold. I'm really quite excited. I don't know if I'll get them before Christmas. I'm hoping I will. So I looked further into this company because I was quite interested in the company origin and story. And this is pretty interesting. So Jerry Harvey did an interview, I would say earlier this year, and he detailed the origination of the business and all of that. If you want to know origin of the business, you can just go on the website and just click on About Us. It's pretty straightforward. But some interesting stuff is that so 90% of his pre-COVID, I would say he said 80 to 90% of his revenue, of his total revenue, was from professional artists from tours, from the bands, from all these people.
Their
When COVID
monitors.
in your monitor, yeah, exactly. So when COVID hit, and he employed about 60 people pre-COVID. So we had 60 people ready to go. And when COVID hit, his company went down to 8 people.
Oh
And
gosh.
I know. And just now, he's building it back up to around 20 to 25 people, and he hopes to expand as this COVID stuff ramps back down. But he said what's really interesting was that we started entering HeadFi and the whole audiophile scene sort of as a side gig, because a lot of our legacy clients, they provide a bulk of the revenue. But what was really interesting was when COVID hit, the demand from audiophiles started to ramp up because they're sitting at home, they had nothing to do, and a lot of people want to invest in good gear. Conversely, the professional musicians have no gigs to play, and they're barely making ends meet. They can barely pay the bills because no one wants to hire them because no events. So what he noticed was that all of this tooling that he invested in, because if you're not familiar with Jerry Harvey's product line, he did make a series of universal IAMs called the Ion series, which were made in collaboration with Astil and Kern, to the best of my knowledge. And those IAMs are made of exotic materials, like some of them are carbon fiber, some are really, really fancy wood resin sort of combos. And he said that our slow burn business of doing these universals for the Asian market and investing in this machinery for universals has been so useful and so helpful. It practically saved the business. It practically saved our skins to survive COVID, because a lot of folks, they wanted these universal IAMs, and we were ready with the machinery, with the infrastructure to make them ready to go. And he's been focusing now. Now his customer base is, I think he said 70 to 80% of his revenue is now from audiophiles, and the other 30% are from professionals now. And his revenue took a 70 to 80% hit in total, which is really terrible, of course.
That's rough.
Yeah. And he said that now we're focusing on audiophile sets because that's where the money is now. And he says, hopefully, when things get back to normal, we will get our revenue will return to what it used to be, and we will likely have more pro-dominant revenue. However, he said what COVID has really taught us is that audiophiles are something we are going to be investing more in. Catering to the audiophile market is something we will be taking more seriously now.
They're very reliable.
Yeah, absolutely. And he said that Jolene is really the first audiophile targeted IAM, and that he was very proud to showcase it at the Can Jam. And he said that throughout the years, as he's gotten to know HeadFi, the folks at the HeadFi HQ, Jude and everyone else, he really appreciates that the brand building and the brand reputation that is built within the consumer line really is really something that you don't really get with the professional line. So he is going to be introducing, I expect we'll be seeing more audiophile tune sets like the Jolene going forward, and even when he does return to where he used to be, and as things return back to what they used to be.
Pro business picks up.
Pro business, yeah. We should be seeing more of these more sets, which are, I should say, more embracing of the audiophile evaluation schema. And I'm really excited to see it, because Jolene is something that, if you've listened to it and you've compared it to, let's say, Layla and the other sets at the booth, it's so different from anything else. It's like focusing on like analog reproduction. It's very raw, and it's not going for monitoring as much it is. It's just enjoyment.
Monitoring clarity. It's more enjoyment and musicality.
Exactly, and it's just so much. It's so cool. It's really cool. So I'm going to be monitoring Jerry Harvey, the company, Jerry Harvey Audio, a little bit more closely, because it seems that they're going to be doing a little bit of a pivot, and they'll be embracing more directions with the audiophile and with their IAM development process. So yeah, that's just something I thought was pretty interesting. A company that has adapted, that was hit severely from COVID, and is now learning to pivot, and is now introducing products that are catering to an audience that he used to relegate. I guess that used to be sort of a hobby, and now is the mainstay of his revenue today and going forward.
Yeah. That's really interesting from someone who saw that internally at Sennheiser, that same flip.
Oh wow, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, like the pro department almost bragged about. I was like, "Oh, we make so much money. We're doing this thing." Like,
Yeah.
well, I didn't even like pay attention to the pro audio Sennheiser thing. Obviously, they sell tons of microphones and things, but I don't want to take over Co's corner. But same thing.
No.
Essentially, it's like, oh, this portfolio diversity is amazing and valuable, and audiophiles are reliable, which is funny because they're fickle, but
They are really fickle.
but yeah, it's definitely an important thing, and I think that's also part of why Sonova wanted to get in on it and wanted to invest in Sennheiser, and why Sennheiser Consumer uh, is really excited about how things have been going the last 2 years.
No, absolutely.
Which is
if you want,
good for everyone else.
I mean, if you want to talk and add more to this, please do. I mean, this isn't just Co's Corner. This is just anybody who likes IEMs or really anything else.
Ev's evangelism.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
No, don't say that. Don't delete that part of the video, Swat. But
there you go.
But no, it's just in general. I bet that because Jared Harvey was so open to say that, and I'll also add that people are scared about the Sonova partnership investment with Sennheiser. They're afraid that that was a bad thing. It's actually the opposite, and I think that one of the changes of the pandemic is a lot more focus on meeting consumers and feeding consumers. So I think there's a bit of a boom that we're starting to see, and that is going to continue for a little bit longer, as Jerry Harvey said. I did want to ask you, the CE getting a custom in-ear is such an experience, and I did it. I did have impacted cerumen, so I had to go across the street to a Med Express, and they got a big honking like like a like an oil pumper or something like that. It was this really big bulb for water, but it was a bit stronger than what you would buy at a Rite Aid or something. But this Med Express nurse, like, oh, this is the first time I've done this, but I know I've got to do it harder. Like, I guess, all right. Wow, you got so much in there. And she wasn't lying. It was, unfortunately, my ears get plugged up like once every 2 or 3 years, to the point where I try to flush them in the shower and use a very mild syringe that squirts sideways instead of straight out. So it hits the walls of my ear canal rather than the eardrum. And that helps a lot. I haven't had to do this in a couple of years. But when I went for my customs, they put it in really far, but I was used to Etymotics, so it wasn't as weird. But yeah, it's almost a relief to know that your eardrum is so far in that it's less likely to get hurt. But the earwax they got out, I do not want to show you a picture because it was.
Oh no, that's okay. I'm good. I'm good there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. I won't show you a picture, but it was about the size of a raisin. There was like 3 pieces, like 2 of them together about the size of a raisin, one of them about the size of a raisin, and the other ear. It was awful. And they're like, "How could you not even hear?" I'm like, well, the brain adjusts, and I could still hear people talking, but some cerumen actually does help a little bit protect your ears and things like that. It's important.
Yeah.
But that much was an earplug. and I had to take a picture of it because it was like a Cronenberg monster kind of fascination. This giant like thing that looked like a tiny like cockroach or something that came out of my ear. But she had also a little bit of skin too. But the I got it done, and I didn't want to wait, just like you. So I went right back to the audiologist, who was not willing to do it herself. I was like, "Okay, it's clean." It's like, "Yeah, it looks clear." So we're gonna do it, and they get it all in there, and then that like suctioning kind of feeling where all of a sudden you have a quieter experience than you've ever experienced before. Like,
it's so blissful.
quieter than
So nice.
It was nice. Some people freak out. Grell says that he likes going to an anechoic chamber because it's like peaceful for him. It doesn't bother him. But a lot of people, they hear like nothing but the blood rushing through their ears, and they start to like panic and freak out. It's almost like sonic suffocation for a lot of people.
Actually,
Um,
speaking of blocking out noise, I also got. I think I told you I'm getting those earplugs, the custom molded
yeah, good
earplugs.
idea. Well, now that you've experienced it, right? There's nothing that can beat
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that you can get this. You can decrease the amount of noise you're hearing by 26 dB without having
Mm-hmm.
to carry these expensive IEMs with you, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something which should be. I mean, I just found out about it on the day. I was just flicking through the booklet, and at the very end it said custom, soft plastic, $100. I'm like, how did I not know about this? This is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god.
I wonder if my impressions can be used as earplugs. I haven't tried that, but
If they laser scan them, they should be. I know Jerry Harvey laser scans everything that comes in.
oh, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that isn't it not Universal Melody. Who's the other? It's like an American one,
Ultimate
Ultimate
Ears.
Ears
Yeah.
that he used to work with. I
Mm.
think they actually have instead of squirting foam in your ear, they actually have like a
Laser
digital
scanner.
scanner. Yeah, and they
They
put
did that
that in your
at
ear.
Angem, I believe.
They would, but only when you're buying their IEM.
Ah.
They're like, well, I'm saving up. Could you do it now and I'll buy it later? No. Okay. Um, and it makes sense. But fascinating things there. I will tell you that for anyone else who's considering customs, don't get your impressions made right after getting your ears flushed. I believe it made my canals get swollen,
Ooh.
and the impressions ended up being, and the resulting in ear monitor ended up being a little bit looser than they probably should have been. And
Mm.
they've never quite fit me right, and always have been a little bit of a disappointment.
Ah, damn. Do you think you'll
But
be getting yourself refitted at any point?
well, it was a smaller company, and they're out of Poland, so I'd have to
Oh,
mail it a
right.
long way.
Yeah.
And the guy was nice about it, and he offered to take them back. But it's harder to kind of add material, and it's kind of a guesswork at that point,
Mhm.
um, without just getting whole new impressions. So to do it right, I would
Yeah.
have to,
Get new
go
IEMs
ahead
or
and
something.
yeah, just go ahead and get my ears flushed, wait like a week, and then go get impressions, and then wait like 2 or 3 months for customs to be made and
Wait,
sent to me.
hold on. If you have a buildup of cerumen, let's say after 2 or 3 years, would the CIEM still fit?
Yeah, you just flush them out again and you'd be
Or
okay.
you just flush
The
them out?
thing is,
Okay.
yeah, it doesn't change the shape of your ear so much. However, you might have saw me hint this in the thread, is that our ears kind of change a little bit. I mean, I don't know. When I was researching customs, people were saying 3 to 5 years, your ears will change shape enough that you'll break the seal, or it won't be quite as good of a fit as it was when the impressions were first made. However, other people say that, like, other than your earlobes hanging really low, your ears don't change shape that much. So I don't know the exact answer to that. I just know mine didn't fit that great from the beginning.
I asked
But
the audiologist, and she said if you're
they would
past,
know.
yeah, and she said if you're past like 25 or whatever, I forget the exact age, you're more or less you're fine. You're
Hmm.
fine. She said don't really worry about it. I mean, unless you're very very old, there really isn't any. You shouldn't be worrying about
Just
it.
stabilize for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like my shoe size.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was just a little bit of fun. My first ever custom, and I think I may get more customs. I may just go forward with that from now on because
You're
I
going to
just
be the new Joker,
maybe right.
because he did
So
all
yeah,
his IEM reviews.
what did he?
Well, I was like L Joker L. He did a lot of
Oh yeah 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 yeah
Universal
yeah,
in
yeah.
ears. It wasn't
Right.
really an L, but it's like that
Mm.
tall line. He did a lot of Universals, and he got a couple customs, and he even did like he worked with his friend who did Fit for a Bat, uh,
Mm.
high high end custom in ear roundup, and that was an
Okay.
interesting read. If you look up that on HeadFi, that was a cool thread.
I will look. Yeah, old Head 5 threads are kind of fun to look at.
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, one
Also, the
more.
one about the smelly. Go ahead.
Two more things before I quickly close out. First thing was I had ambient acoustics. I mentioned them last week, and I said they sounded like garbage.
Oh,
Um, so I changed the tips, and now they sound A/S tier. They're incredible.
wow.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Yeah. So the spin fits, I want to say the CP 500s. Could be the 100s. It's one of those two. I have so many tips, I've lost track. Those ear tips make the whole difference. So the Mad 24 short impression would be if you want a lot of layering. We're talking just you want a microscope in your music and just layer upon layer of stuff. You want like a lasagna, boom. Then that's Mad 24 is it. Because you can just get lost in a song because your brain wants to analyze every single note. It's incredible. I've never had this sort of feeling where I can just dig all the way down and there's still more to be discovered in a song. So a good example would be what's called Bohemian Rhapsody on the Mad 24. Jesus, it's unbelievable. The Mad 16 is strangely even though these monitors are supposed to be for monitoring. The Mad 16 is both of these have incredible amounts of bass. So these are like, I would say, Odyssey headphones. In my opinion, tad too much sub bass. But the Mad 16 is a warmer, little lusher, and it's definitely more of
That's sacrilege. No such thing as too much sub bass.
Well, I mean,
no, it could be too much.
Yeah, it's preferences. Yeah, it's preferences. The Mad 16 is more of if you want to work and listen to stuff at the same time, that's what you really want to go for. It's a bit warmer. It's more forgiving, definitely more forgiving for sure. Mad 24, that you can't work, you can't be productive. You can't. So the downside of these IEMs, I would say, both would be they are. So it's all balanced armature. You're not going to get that impact you're looking for with a dynamic driver. And no matter how much, I mean, they've really tried to get bass and sub bass in, and it's a lot. But you're still getting more of the same, and that's not really helping things, in my opinion. I do prefer dynamic driver slam, and no amount of BAs can compensate for that. The other thing is that it's a very linear IEM, so you're not going to get that coloration you're looking for. If you let's say you like Jerry Harvey IEMs, this isn't for you. But if you like the Odyssey sound, this could be it. This really could be for you. I liken the Mad 24 to maybe an LCD4 classic. It's very interesting. Not shiny in the upper and not shiny in the treble, actually. It's a lot of air, well extended in the treble, but not as well extended as the Elysian X. Doesn't have as tall of a soundstage, but still quite wide. I do feel that the ceiling, the floor to ceiling height is smaller than the Elysian X, but it is wider than, but the soundstage is wider than the Elysian X. And also it's very efficient. So on my P6 Pro, I was maybe at volume 9 out of 60 on low gain. So you want to keep that in mind. And that was on unbalanced. So it's a very easy, very, very easy to drive. And it's crossover list. It's a crossover list design. And it's custom only. These Mad IEMs, they only have universals for the tour, but these are custom only. So
yeah, you were saying that there's like no crossover, like 16 or 24 drivers.
Yeah.
It lives up to its name. It does sound very mad, but
it is. Yeah.
it's sometimes you gotta have a little madman to have a little fun.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do respect these IEMs. They are very quite good. But when you look at the prices, I believe the Mad 24 is 35 or 3600, and it's custom only, and it's hard to get a demo. I mean, if you can get a demo and you like it, great. If you can't, if you're okay with
customs can be quite a leap of faith.
Yeah, it is kind of a leap because at the end of the day, it's all BA, and I don't know. I mean, I can't get I can't get satisfaction from it, and also it's all based in Ukraine. So if you have a fit issue, you'll have to send it to Ukraine. If you have a tech issue, you have to send it back to Ukraine. So I like to buy customs from American companies if I can. It's much easier.
Or turnaround time.
Yeah, or get it from a distributor, American distributor. So the good news there is that I've reached out to Music Tech, and they will be carrying MAD. So if you have any issues with MAD, they will take care of it for you. So that will be in the future. I believe early next year they'll announce their support for
service.
MAD. Yeah.
Nice.
And then one other thing, Unique Melody has come out. They've released in China. They've announced the MEXT, MEXT, and yes, and that
not the MEXT, but the MEXT.
Yes, the MEXT. And if you've been watching HeadFi, it's a bit of a controversial launch because Well, some time ago, when Empire Ears came out with the Evo, Unique Melody, they retracted it in like half an hour. But Unique Melody posted something on social media saying we don't like copycats. And this is when Empire Ears, they came out with the Evo, which had like this bone conduction module that they put on the side of the IEM. And then Unique Melody came out in a social media post saying, "Hey, we don't like copycats." It was taken down. It was taken down in half an hour. And I was curious because I'm like, that bone conduction implementation is vastly different to what you're doing. Why are you being a massive stink about it? And I asked the engineer, and he said, "Yeah, I don't know who did that. That was really dumb." And now I saw the MEXT has been announced, and my God, it's just like the Evo. It's just so similar. Just the way, and what they've done is that in the product announcement, they've actually they took an Evo, they defaced the logo off it, and then they compared the MEXT and the Evo side by side, and the base module is identical. The bone conduction module is identical.
Oh.
And so I can see where Unique Melody is, like if they were developing the MEXT and then Evo came out and it's like that, then they're probably thinking, oh shit, when we come out with ours, they're going to say China just copies. So I can kind of see where they're coming out with that. The way they handled it though wasn't the best. But yeah, anyway, so when MEXT came out, obviously, that was kind of a drama thing. But so anyway, what's interesting about MEXT is that it's going to be it's more of a raucous, more of a thunderous, bassier, wild signature. Yes, just like that. Yeah, you want to quote EV Shrug. Exactly. He got it down. Yeah, I think he may have a prototype of the MEXT based on that impression. Yeah, it's a step down from the MES 2. It's going to be around $1,000, and I'm thinking of getting one. I may get one. I don't know. If it does live up to what they're saying, which is raucous, thunderous, and bassy, I may just go for it because I don't really have an IEM for that signature in my collection. So yeah, that could be fun.
Yeah, $1,000 it's not cheap, but it's an attainable price.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and the thing is, with Unique Melody, like a lot of Chinese brands, their prices, MSRP, are generally recommended, and
not the
they are often discounted. So they often are 10 or 20% off. Like look at MEST. MEST 2 retail is $1,700. You can get it from Music Tech today at $1,200, brand new in box. So that's when Americans price things, it's pretty much it is what it is, unless you know the right people. With the Chinese stuff, it's like Hi-Fi Man. It's a little bit above what they expect you to realistically pay.
Do you think that's because maybe it sticks to the price better in China, but because they're so far away, there's less oversight in America?
Yeah, I think also because
and maybe the inverse is also true for American products in China.
I think price in China is a status thing as well. So if you can price something very high, then people will respect you more for it. So
yeah, I've heard that argument from other people.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Unique Melody tends to have decent IEMs. Recently, they've been making some decent stuff. The Indigo is quite cool as well, but I'm skipping that one. The Mentor should be coming out.
The name.
What, the Indigo?
I like the color indigo, so I like.
Yeah. It's a great. Yeah, have you seen the Indigo? It's really beautiful.
No, I've not. I'll have a look at it on the thread later on Sonic Vision's Discord.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. The price, not so much. But yeah, it's a cool IEM. The Mentor Fabled Sound, I asked Unique Melody for an update. They should be targeting around April, May, around there. It could be delayed, of course, because part shortages, etc. But that's the target. So hopefully it comes out around then. If not, no big deal. But I do have my name down for a Mentor sound. So
interesting.
When I do get that in, I will be sure to share my impressions of that. And that's about it. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
All right, fantastic. Okay, well, we're quite a bit over time today, so I got to get going here. So I'm gonna just shut it down here. Evie, let's leave your topic for next week. I'll let you introduce it at that time. And I really appreciate.
Think about it.
Yeah, let's just bring it up next week. I really appreciate it, guys. You guys are great. It was a fantastic show. I really enjoyed listening, and look forward to the next one next week. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Same time, same bat channel.